Okay, students, today we have your tests only, so make sure that you access the speed building and then you'll have your tests. And so let me give you words on your 120 number 1. You have Mr. Dunlap, Carl Nelson, and Mr. Becker. And it starts in the middle, and this is going to be 120 Q&A number 1 for 5 minutes, you all. Mr. Dunlap, who gave this party?
Carl Nelson.
How many people were there?
About 15 or 20.
What did you have to drink at the party?
I had some gin and tonic.
How many glasses did you have?
2 or 3 glasses.
Now, after you had been at this party for a period of time, you went to a liquor store to buy more liquor. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You had taken up a collection at the party. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The reason for taking up the collection was to purchase more liquor. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The guests at the party had consumed all of the liquor that had been brought to the party. Is that right?
I don't know if it was all gone.
Nearly all gone?
Probably.
Were the guests at this party asked to bring their own liquor?
Yes, sir.
And you brought a bottle of gin, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you also brought some tonic.
Yes, sir.
Now, while you were sitting at the kitchen table, drinking and talking, who else was at the party?
My wife and Carl.
Was it there that you mixed the gin and tonic?
Yes, sir.
What, if anything, did you observe Carl drink?
He had the same thing.
And what was that?
Gin and tonic.
How about your wife? What did she have?
My wife does not drink.
Now, you said that you saw other people drinking your gin. Were you referring to Carl Nelson?
I think quite a few people were drinking my gin.
When you left to go to the liquor store, was the gin bottle empty?
Yes, sir.
Now, once you arrived at the liquor store, you and Carl went inside. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You went to get what?
We went to get some gin.
Did you pick up anything else?
Some tonic.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
You said Carl went to the cooler. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What did he pick up?
Some beer.
How much beer?
I don't remember.
Now, you put some money down on the counter. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Who else was in this immediate area at that time?
Just Mr. Becker. He was the clerk behind the counter.
Where was Carl?
To my right.
So he was also at the counter?
Yes.
And what was Mr. Becker doing?
He was ringing up everything.
What was he using?
A cash register.
Where was the cash register located?
I think there was an adding machine on the counter, and then there was the cash register. If he was facing me, it would be to his right.
Was he asking or using the adding machine or the cash register?
I am not sure.
Were you watching what he was doing?
Not really.
And then the shoving of Carl Nelson took place. Is that correct?
Yes.
What did Carl do when this took place?
He just stood there.
Was he leaning on the counter?
His feet were on the floor.
What portion of his body was on the counter?
The upper part of his hips.
What did Mr. Becker say to him, if anything?
He told him to get off of the counter.
And what did Carl say in reply, if anything?
He said he had worked all day and he was tired.
Then what did Mr. Becker say?
He shoved him and told him to get off the counter.
Mr. Becker then pushed him off. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you know how many drinks Carl had had? Okay, and then we have your second test. 120, you have Mr. Baker, 2nd Avenue, and Russell Road, and Buick. Starts in the middle, and this will be 120, number 2 for 5 minutes, you all. Mr. Baker, there isn't any question, is there, that there was a stop sign on the right-hand side of 2nd Avenue and Russell Road?
May I explain how I found out that there was a stop sign?
I say there isn't any question, there was one.
May I explain how I found out?
First, I want to ask you, was there a stop sign? Answer yes or no.
I didn't know until after the accident.
But was there one there at the time you crossed the intersection?
When I visited the scene after the accident, I saw the sign.
Is there any question in your mind that it was there at the time of the accident?
No, there is no question in my mind now.
As I understand it, although there was such a sign, you did not see it. Is that right?
I could not see it.
You did not see it.
I did not, and I could not see it.
Was the bus ahead of you moving, or was it stopped at the corner?
It was moving.
As I recall, you said the bus was the first car in line. Then there was a Buick, and then there was your car. Is that right?
That's right. And there were other cars behind me.
About what distance would you say separated the Buick from the bus?
About 20 feet.
Were you about the same distance behind the Buick?
Yes.
As you rode along, you could see ahead by looking to the left or to the right beyond the bus. Could you not?
No, I could not.
You couldn't see anything?
There were cars parked to the curb at the right.
There came a time when you got fairly close to the corner. Is that right?
That's right.
At that time, did you look over to the right to see what was along the curb?
I looked to where the bus was stopped.
Before it stopped, did you look over there?
I was looking directly ahead of me.
As you looked directly ahead, you couldn't see anything but the back of the bus.
I could see the back of the Buick and the moving traffic.
When you got up to the corner, it was still daylight, wasn't it?
It was about 6:30.
This was in June.
It was light.
This was daylight saving time.
That's right.
It was bright daylight, wasn't it?
Well, it was evening, but it was light yet.
As a matter of fact, this accident happened on June 18, didn't it?
That's right.
And June 21 is the longest day of the year, isn't it?
Yes.
And 6:30 daylight time is actually 5:30 sun time, isn't it?
I assume it is.
Would you say that the sun didn't set on June 18 until approximately 8:30 p.m.?
I am not an authority on that.
Did you have your headlights on, Mr. Baker?
No.
Were they necessary?
No, they were not necessary.
Now, I think you said that this street you were on was wide enough for 4 cars from curb to curb. Is that right?
It was wide enough for 2 cars moving and 2 cars parked, one on each side.
So that would be 4 cars from curb to curb.
That's right.
Would you say the street was 40 or 45 feet wide?
I would say it was.
What about Russell Road? Was that as wide?
It looked to be the same width, but it was one-way street with no parking.
Then if it was a one-way street, you knew that the traffic on it would come from one direction only. Is that correct? Okay, and so then we'll get ready for your 100s.
The weird 5.
Can't even see. And so you have on your 100 number 1, 2nd Avenue and Russell Road, Buick. And so this starts in the middle. This is going to be 100 number 1 for 5 minutes. That would be from your left as you approach the intersection. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did there come a time when the bus pulled over and stopped at the right-hand curve of 2nd Avenue?
Yes, prior to coming to the intersection.
When the bus stopped, what was the distance from the front of the bus to the Russell Road curb?
I would say about 10 feet.
Now, there came a time when you pulled up alongside the bus. Isn't that right?
I was in back of the bus. The Buick was alongside the bus.
Didn't there come a time when your car came up alongside the bus?
Prior to the accident, yes.
There came a time when the front of your car would be about even with the front of the bus. Is that right?
Yes.
At that point, the front of your car would be about 10 feet from the Russell Road curb line. Is that right?
Yes.
In other words, when you got to a point where the front of your car and the front of the bus were right alongside of each other, then the front of your car was about 10 feet from Russell Road.
I was rolling, but the bus was stopped.
But there came a time when you reached that point. Is that correct?
Yes.
At that time, did you look to your left to see whether there was any traffic coming on Russell Road?
I did look to my left.
About how far up Russell Road could you see when your car and the front of the bus were in line?
I could see across the street.
Couldn't you see up Russell Road a couple of 100 feet?
I could. There was traffic rolling all the way down Russell Road.
Then you did see cars coming.
There were cars coming, yes.
Nevertheless, as I understand it, you continued ahead. Is that right?
I followed the Buick. He went through.
And you continued also. Is that right?
That's right.
And you were in collision with one of the cars that was coming down Russell Road?
I was in collision.
Yes.
That car hit me at the side door.
The two cars were in collision. Isn't that right?
That's right.
Mr. Baker, you testified yesterday that the front of your car was only 8 feet into the intersection when the accident happened.
That's right. 8 or 10 feet.
Was the car that was in collision with you moving on its side of Russell Road?
It was to the extreme right.
But when the collision happened, the other car had crossed more than half of 2nd Avenue. Isn't that so?
I didn't see it.
I beg your pardon?
I didn't see that car.
You told us yesterday that when you passed alongside the bus, there were about 18 inches between your car and the bus. Is that right?
That's right.
Did you continue ahead in that same path of travel up to the time and then we have your second 100 Q&A, Carl A. Bonner, Mr. Bonner, Owens Printing Company, Roy Sullivan, 32 Mauser, Mr. Otis, Paul Otis, Christmas, Roy, and Gail. And this will be test number 100, and it starts at the very beginning, you all, for 5 minutes. Will you state your full name, please?
Carl A. Bonner.
How do you spell your last name?
B-O-N-N-E-R.
Are you employed, Mr. Bonner?
Yes, I am.
Where do you work?
I work for Owens Printing Company.
In what capacity?
I am the office manager.
How long have you been with them?
This is a new job. I just started 2 weeks ago.
Do you know the defendant, Roy Sullivan?
Yes, I do.
How long have you known him?
I would say 3 or 4 years.
Do you own a gun, Mr. Bonner?
No, I don't.
Did you own a gun at one time?
Yes, I did.
What type of gun was it?
It was a 32 Mauser.
Is that an automatic revolver?
Yes, it is.
Do you know where that weapon was on February 24, 1978?
Yes, I do.
Where was it?
As far as I know, it was in the possession of Roy Sullivan.
And did you see him on the 21st day of December, 1977?
Yes,
Where did you see him?
at his home.
How do you happen to remember the 21st day of December after all this time?
This goes back to the day when I was originally contacted by Mr. Otis.
Who?
Paul Otis. He was working with Roy as an attorney, and he had called me and asked me about the date. The date I did not remember. What I did recall was that it was the Wednesday before Christmas, and there were circumstances that made me remember the day.
What circumstances made you remember the day?
Well, I was late in picking up my girlfriend, and she broke up with me as a result. She had to wait for an hour after work because I was late and I had her car at the time. This is the reason I can remember this particular day.
This was the Wednesday before Christmas. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Where was it that you saw the defendant on that day?
At his home.
Do you recall what time you arrived at his home?
I would estimate about 7:30.
Who was there at the time?
Roy and Gail.
Who is Gail?
Gail is Roy's girlfriend.
By the way, have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Nothing but a traffic violation.
So we can say you haven't been convicted of a crime. Is that right?
That's right.
How long did you remain at Roy's house?
I was there until approximately 1 o'clock.
What time were you supposed to pick up your girlfriend?
At 1 o'clock.
And you didn't make it because you were still at Roy's house.
That's right.
Did you leave his house for any period of time?
No, I did not.
Did Roy leave for any period of time?
Not that I remember.
Is it possible he could have been gone for a very short period?
Yes. Sometimes he would go out.
Okay, and so that concludes your Q&As, you all. They were very good. Hopefully you all got one, okay? Have a great day.